everybody. Thanks for watching. This is Michael Thompson. I'm with the East Lee County Republican Club, and today I'm sitting with Michael Dreikorn. Mike is a candidate for the Lee County Board of County Commissioners, and we'd like to welcome him to the show today.
Thank you, Michael. What a pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Mike. So, Mike, tell us a little bit about you. Bring us all the way up until kind of like where we're at right now.
So I grew up in Southern California, a product of the 1960s, the psychedelic era, so to speak, right? It was a very adventurous time, and one of the things I have to really be fortunate for is that when I grew up under the auspices of Governor Reagan. He was a rock star governor back then. Things in California were humming. Our industry was booming. Our educational system was one of the top in the country. And I'm really fortunate and happy to have been part of that adventure. I had some challenges as a kid, as many kids do. And so at the age of 15, I was a runaway. And I essentially lived on the streets for 3 years. When I say lived on the streets, literally in parked cars, the back of stores and dumpsters and what have you. Meanwhile, I enrolled myself in school, and I would work whatever jobs I can get. My grandmother, and by the way, she's still alive. She just turned 100 years old in September.
Oh, that's awesome.
It is awesome. She suggested that I consider the military. And I did. I joined the military, and my call to action was essentially 2 weeks after the Iranian students took over our embassy. I was enlisted in the U.S. Army, and I was off to boot camp 2 months later. And then I spent the next 7.5 years in the U.S. Army, helicopter operations. Every bit of that was deployed in Western Europe. I spent most of it on the Czechoslovakian East German border. I got to tell you, the discipline that I learned in the military is fundamental to who I am today. I got my GED while I was there. I started my undergraduate's degree in Bachelor's of Professional Aeronautics, which is essentially an engineering background in aviation. Unfortunately, I was injured. I was in a couple of accidents while I was in the military. Ended up spending...
In combat?
No, it was air operations. Now, we had a couple crashes. That pushed me back into the workforce. And by that time, I was married with a son and moved back to my home in California, went into the defense contract industry, worked on really cool things like intercontinental nuclear ballistic missiles, and got into the whole manufacturing quality and compliance and government contracting, and my career gravitated quite quickly.
What age are you about now?
In my early 20s. So
Okay.
when I got out of the military, I was 26.
Okay.
So my 20s to my 30s, I was bouncing around the world, working in aerospace, phenomenal opportunities. I know what it means to bring factories and jobs to communities. By that time, I was starting on a master's program, got a master's degree. There were some areas in my profession that needed to be defined, so I wrote some books on it. Became recognized by my peer groups within the aviation, space and defense industry, engineering, and what have you, as a subject matter expert. Was recruited by the FAA to go to Washington, D.C., and where I was ultimately the assistant division manager for production and airworthiness, which is the number 2 person in all of the FAA for aviation safety in the production realm. From there, I started my doctorate degree at George Washington, and in human resource organizational development. By the way, all my degrees I've completed with nearly a 4.0 average. This is not bad for a guy that didn't ever finish high school.
I was about to say it's pretty impressive for a runaway.
Yeah. In 2002, I decided it was time for me to cut my own teeth and become an entrepreneur on my own. I started a company called the IPL Group, and it focuses on providing engineering and consulting services to the aerospace and defense industry. So that brings me to Florida. And Florida was supposed to be, I'm going to relax a little bit with my business. I'm going to just live the Southwest Florida dream. and I had no intention of getting into public service.
You've done a lot of things, and I'm sure being in the military is part of the reason you still got that drive and motivation.
I hate bullies.
Yeah,
I hate bullies. I hate it when people become disenfranchised because the government above them decides for them what right is,
right.
without listening to the voice of the people. And I see that a lot at the federal level, the local level, the state level. And God gave me the gift of discernment and gab. And so I apply both, not always equally, but I do apply them, and He gave me some brawn. And I utilize that to do good.
So I guess that kind of brings us to the county commission.
Yes.
You announced your candidacy for the county commission. Why? I mean, what's your vision for Lee County? Moving forward, what are some of the things that you would like to see our county get better at?
Right.
What are some of the things that you would like to see our county try out that maybe we're not doing now? We got a lot of issues facing Lee County. Transportation, affordable housing, water quality.
Yep. That's all of the above. I mean, it's not one issue, and that is why I am running, is that we have the complexity of a major metropolitan community, because that's what we're becoming. We're going to be 1 million people in 2029. We have an average growth rate of about 3.4%. That growth rate will not stop over the next 20, 30, 40, 100 years.
Yeah.
We will continue to grow. And water quality is right at the top, obviously, but it's not the only issue. We see it now during the season, just how difficult it is to get from point A to point B on time. And so when we do our planning, we're frequently talking about the number of people, residents, but we don't always consider all of the number of surge tourists, the people that show up during spring training, or that show up during one of the major events like an offshore boat race or something like that. So our infrastructure needs to be sized to what the realities are of our community. And it needs to be sized not necessarily just for today, because it takes time to build a road. We need to prevent a perpetual construction zone on a road. So when we build a road, we need to be thinking 20 years out what the capacity is going to be. Otherwise, we're going to finish the road to what our needs are today, and we're going to find that we're already at capacity with a brand new road and have to start whiting it again. Affordable housing you talked about, the answer to that is complex. And it's going to be different depending where you are in the county and how you address it. And the cities have to step up. The municipalities that for which create most of Lee County, they have a big role to play in here. But what they are not is they don't have any synergies on how they're going to address that. They address it within the four walls of the confines of their municipality. Whereas at the county, we need to have a county-wide plan. What I would like to bring is that leadership to bring them together, bring in the areas of unincorporated Lee County, because affordable housing on Pine Island means something different than on Sanibel versus something different in Cape Coral, Fort Myers, or in Alva. And so we need to bring all the constituents in and figure out what that solution is. And I think it also goes to zoning. I mean, we need to have mixed use. We need to allow businesses on the ground floor and people living above them. We need to cut down on the amount of traffic by making the commutes walkable. We need to have walkable communities. So I'm promoting a 100-year vision. It's not a 100-year plan. It's a 100-year vision of where we want to be going forward as a community, because we are going to be a multi-million population in our lifetime, and very much so in our grandchildren's lifetime. And do we want it to be a community that we are proud of today, that we are going to leave to our grandchildren, or are we going to simply say, I'm not going to be around, who cares? Yeah, I have grandchildren. Yeah, I'm going to prefer to make sure that we do something that we're going to be proud of. We have a monopoly in Lee County on the health system. When it takes 3 to 4 months to get into a primary care physician for an appointment, that is not health care.
It's tough.
And I'm going through it right now, trying to
You
get
and
an
me
appointment.
both. You and me both.
And so we need competition in Lee County in healthcare. We need, and God bless Lee Health, they've been great and I love my doctors there.
Yeah.
I can't see my doctors. RSW is a gold mine of potential.
Yeah.
It needs more gates. We need to have more connections between RSW and destinations that people want to go to, and bring people here as well. So there's a lot of those things that I would be focusing in on as a county commissioner.
You know, as our county continues to grow and grow, traffic is tough. Season, it's really tough. I wanted to be over here, and I came over here, and damn it, if I don't see the same thing happening here that happened over there, 30 years ago, people are coming nonstop,
Yep.
with the policies that the Democrats have up north and out west. Some people say this is God's waiting room, and, people, pass away and the new ones replace them. I get all that, but still.
Yeah, so money's a big issue on that. Who's going to pay for it?
Yeah, no doubt.
We need to put priorities together. We need to focus on our biggest pinch points, and we need to fund the development of these infrastructure challenges and projects accordingly. And we got to look out. We have to reach out to state and federal resources for help to do that. And the cities, the municipalities, are going to have to step up too. A lot of these are city streets. So collectively, I believe this is where some of my expertise can come in. Yes, I've been in the aerospace industry for 40 years, but I've also been playing in the infrastructure transportation area. And I do a lot of consulting to foreign governments on infrastructure, predominantly connectivity between maritime ports, airports, the rail, and then the roadways that connect all of those. Done a lot of that in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. What they do is they build they build for the future. They don't have the perpetual construction zones, but they also try to minimize the impact to the roadways by keeping people or allowing people to live close to work. And in Alva and out in Lehigh, there's not a lot of employment out there. They commute into Fort Myers and other places, right? We need to do a better job of putting the jobs where the people live, so our infrastructure challenges aren't so significant. And I think that's where a different type of thinking is valuable here, because if you only focus on the transportation issue in itself, you're only focusing on roads. But if you put transportation and jobs and population and all of these other things together, you can come up with a more integrated solution that's not as expensive, as an upside to providing employment. It provides a stronger economy, provides stronger ad valorem for us to do more. I mean, it's a perpetuating positive activity.
Yeah. You mentioned money, and obviously money and being able to pay for things is extremely important. Another candidate for the Board of County Commissioners, Nick Betos, is a big advocate for increasing the impact fees to the full amount. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think growth should pay for growth. I've been a recipient of having to pay impact fees.
Yeah.
My take on the impact fee structure is that it's not always fair. I know of colleagues in Lehigh, for example, that have no septic. They have a well. They have a dirt road. They really don't have many services, but they're paying the same impact fee as somebody else that does have all of that. And it doesn't smell fair. So I am a proponent of bringing back the impact fee.
President Trump, how do you think he's doing?
Yeah, so I was a supporter of Trump the day he came down the escalator.
Me too.
He was in my mind, a breath of fresh air. I don't always agree with everything Trump does. I don't think everybody always agrees with everything that everybody does.
Sure.
For instance, one of the more recent ones was providing the Chinese aircraft manufacturers with American-made engines. It's really going to undermine Boeing and Airbus, and it's going to create a new airplane industry for China. He's looking at it from a different view. Is that it's instead of giving them the technology through components, we're just going to give them full engines. I would have taken a third route.
Can't they just reverse engineer it?
They've been trying to do that for 50 years and they can't do it. So have the Russians. So have the Indians. They can't do it. Engines are a crystal ball black science. There's so many unique processes related to the metallurgical controls of a titanium fan blade that's going into a combustion section. I mean, the answer is yes, but not very well.
Right.
And that is what our niche is. With regards to Mr. Trump, President Trump, we need to get him reelected. There is so much that needs to be done in the United States. I think even those that are not supporters of him will like what happens in the next administration.
The Democrats held their debate the other night. It was a disaster of epic proportion. As a strong conservative and Republican, there's nothing more that I would love to see, except more of that. And unfortunately, I don't watch it. I think it's a total embarrassment, to American politics to have these people standing up on stage, making stuff up, making accusations that they're more concerned about people coming across the border than the people that actually live here. What are your thoughts?
My take on those debates are they're not focused on the American people. They're focused at sniping at each other. That's not America. And so if you ask me who won that debate, President Trump won that debate, hands down.
I want to talk with you just a few more things on the national level. The Second Amendment, especially now. Even here in Florida, the Senate president, who is a Republican, received over $500,000 in donations from mini Mike Bloomberg from his Everytown USA. It's unbelievable. Talk to me about that.
The Second Amendment is the second revision to the U.S. Constitution. It was already contemplated when they wrote the Constitution, but they needed to work out the Bill of Rights. Those 10 amendments were already contemplated when the founders were talking about what are the tangible inherent rights of American citizens that shall prevail throughout history. And in that is that the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. It's very simple. There's no other interpretation.
Let me ask you this. There's so many people out there who will say, okay, well, we get that, but you don't need these assault rifles. You don't need to have weapons of war. Well,
that's an infringement. That's your opinion, and they're not really weapons of war. When I was flying helicopters in the Army, I carried a .45 ACP, right? So they're not talking about that being a weapon of war, but
right.
But it was built in 1911 to fend off actually the Samoans in the islands down there in the Pacific. Let me bring that to the county level. Mm-hmm. So we had a Second Amendment nullification proposal put into action several times in Tallahassee by citizens over the years, and many of those folks are still with us in Tallahassee, and it never got any traction. That nullification would have said if the federal government, Congress, writes a law that infringes, or if there's an executive order that infringes on Second Amendment in any whatsoever way, it will not be enforceable in the state of Florida. That has not passed. So what we need to do as a county, and the county's already done it, but it didn't have any teeth, needs to pass a Second Amendment sanctuary city resolution. And it needs to be tailored after what they've done in Virginia. The ones in Florida are good too. Virginia are rock star resolutions. As your county commissioner, and I've already created a video on this, I'm a proponent of this. I would advocate that the other 4 county commissioners get on board. We declare Lee County as a Second Amendment sanctuary county. It put some real teeth into that resolution and support our elected sheriff that the sheriff will stand with that resolution, which means that the sheriff will not confiscate weapons from people who are allowed to have them via the Second Amendment. Period. High on my list.
Yeah, no doubt. Red flag laws.
I'm not a proponent of red flag laws because I think it's a further erosion of liberty and our rights. I do believe those legislators who did pass those laws here in Florida should be held accountable for being weak and not paying attention to what the root cause was at those issues. They pulled off an emotional law, is what they did.
Speaking of another polarizing topic, this, besides the Second Amendment, is abortion. Just yesterday, the Florida House passed a proposal that would give parental consent for teenagers to have abortions in the state of Florida. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I can't even believe that this is even an issue, right? So if a principal was to give a child a swat, a spanking at the school, that principal and the school system would be under all kinds of criminal indictments. Yet we allow a minor to go into an abortion clinic without the parental consent and have something pulled from their womb? An invasive process? Where's the common sense in that? So the fact that we're having this conversation means that we've got something flawed in our society. So I am a pro-life advocate. I've always been a pro-life advocate. I believe that life begins at conception.
Mike, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate you sitting down with us. I encourage you guys to get to know Mike a little bit better. Please visit his website, learn a little bit more about some of the things that he's wanting to bring to Lee County. Reach out to him. You're more than welcome to give him a call. Visit his campaign website, and just wanted to say thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to talking with you again soon. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.